Welcome to another episode of The Right Stuff. I'm Ken Coomes, your host, part of TV Toastmasters and Daylighters Toastmasters. And we have a great program today because my guest is Kathryn Schleich from Minnesota. We're going to talk about some of her writings, including Salvation Station. Kathryn, welcome, and I'm so glad you could make it.
Thank you so much, Ken. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a pleasure for all of our viewers as well. So I mentioned the Salvation Station, so if we can start there, why don't you tell them a little bit about that book?
Salvation Station is a crime novel, and there are three intertwining stories that all come together in the climax. It's also, the second storyline has a lot to do with religion and the dangers of accepting anything as truth. And that doesn't necessarily just apply to religion, but politics and other things as well. But it's solving a crime, religious fraud, intrigue, suspense. The reviews have been phenomenal, so I'm very grateful. And it's just been a wonderful experience. We are getting ready to do an audiobook as well.
Of Salvation Station?
Yes.
Great. It sounds like it's got something for everyone in there, and I'm intrigued already. I was intrigued just by the title. We're going to show our viewers a picture here. This is the cover of Salvation Station. Salvation Station. And that one is those three interleaving stories or topics that Kathryn just talked about. There's more. There's so much more. So let's move to where we talk about women.
Okay.
Powerful women and women with choices. So tell us a little bit, Kathryn, about your book, Hollywood and Catholic Women, which has a longer title, but I'm shortening it to just that piece.
Hollywood and Catholic Women evolved from my master's thesis. I was married to a Catholic deacon for over 20 years, and I was a convert, and I found it very interesting how Catholic women were portrayed in films, particularly Hollywood films. So my original master's thesis was 11 films that started in the 1940s and went up through the 1980s. The second edition expanded on that, and I included cable television, including The Sopranos, and another series told from a lapsed Catholic woman's point of view called Saving Grace. And the reason I expanded the book is because at that time there were many more positive portrayals of Catholic women than there had been in the past. For example, Grace Hannah Darko in Saving Grace wants nothing to do with Catholicism, but she is a great detective, and she's a decent human being, and she does what's right. And in the series ends, and I don't think I'm giving anything away. Grace literally takes on an incarnation of Satan and sacrifices her life to save humanity, which I think is a pretty big deal.
Sounds like a very big deal. Sounds like another exciting tale or series of tales. Now, those 11 films you referenced and then expanding to cable, are those in your thesis in the book we're talking about, or both?
My thesis is limited to just films. Okay. And then the second edition, there was the first edition of Hollywood and Catholic Women, which came out in 2012, or 2007, I'm sorry. I decided to expand it and added new films, a couple of which I had forgotten, such as Dead Man Walking with Susan Sarandon, which is a very positive portrayal of a nun and committing her life to helping men on death row. And a lot of times you don't always get that kind of positive portrayal, especially where nuns are concerned. So that was part of the reason I decided to update it, because I had forgotten one of the most important films. And then things like Saving Grace and The Sopranos came along. And in The Sopranos, the women willed their power over their men, whether it's Tony Soprano or whoever, via religion.
Okay. It's I feel like we're in an age where there are more deep roles for women in all the visual medium than there were before. I don't know that we're there yet, but Men Walking, for example, I thought was a very powerful portrayal, and Susan Sarandon always does a good job, I think.
Oh yeah, she was amazing, and I believe she won an Oscar for, and Sean Penn was amazing too. But it really gave a positive portrayal of a nun who is, I mean, she could be a little sarcastic about her faith sometimes. And so she wasn't, so pious. I mean, sometimes that portrayal, especially in the early 60s, when things were changing after Vatican II, filmmakers, especially in Hollywood, who are always behind, didn't really know what to do with that. So you had some really silly movies. And so I was happy to see that kind of positive, strong portrayal of a nun.
You mentioned Hollywood being always behind, and I wonder if that's partly because they want to make sure the public is ready to receive something and it'll make a box office hit, perhaps.
Part of that is partly true, but it's always about the money.
It is indeed. We've talked enough about that. I want to make sure, even though I shortened it before, to let people know that Hollywood and Catholic women, virgins, whores, mothers, and other images. So it is loaded with female roles for females to read, to appreciate, to understand, to not let us forget, for men to understand women and to realize
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right, so they can recognize that women have different places. It's not all one little shoebox. So that sounds great. And I noticed you've also published several short pieces of fiction.
Yes.
Some award winners.
I was recently awarded honorable mention in the 2020 Writers Digest contest in the spiritual and religious category for my short story, Finding Hope in No Man's Land, which is about my ex-husband. As a child, his family was career Air Force, and an experience that he had at the Berlin Wall in 1968.
Good, and congratulations on that. It's a prestigious award. Writers Digest gets an awful lot of submissions from people at various talent levels, but their winners are always stellar, as you are as a writer.
Oh, thank you.
So we've talked a little bit about your writing, but before we go any further, I think our viewers would like to know a little bit more about you. So you mentioned that you were married to a deacon for 20 years.
That's correct.
What else about your background would help us relate to you as an author and as a person that you want to share with the public?
My background, I initially wanted to go into journalism. And so my bachelor's is in journalism, and I specialized in broadcast journalism. And then when my then husband and I moved to Fresno, California for his first job, Catholic jobs, a lot of times, whether you're a deacon or just a member of the Newman Center, occur in the evening. So in any event, I had a lot of time on my hands because when you're meeting with students that generally happens in the evening. And so we were at the Newman Center for Fresno State University. And I decided I might as well make the best of it and get my master's. And so I did. I got my master's in mass communication. And I had written as a child, but I had kind of gotten away from that. I mean, life just kind of gets in the way. And it wasn't until I started writing my master's thesis that I remembered how much I liked writing and how much it fulfilled me. And so I started writing stories, and it's only been really the last 15 years or so where my writing has really become more prolific. I mean, for example, Salvation Station started out as a screenplay, and that whole process took 10 years. And if you're going to be an author with a regular output, 10 years is a long time.
It sounds like a long time. A labor of love, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Well, we're coming to the close of our first segment, and we've got a lot more to talk about. So thank you, Kathryn, and we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back. Viewers, if you have any questions, send them my way. Thanks.
I joined Toastmasters to improve my speaking, listening, communication, and leadership skills.
Toastmasters gave me incredible confidence.
Confidence.
Confidence, great listening skills,
Poise.
Great leadership skills.
leadership skills,
The ability to speak in public.
strength,
a captive audience.
Quality feedback from the more experienced Toastmasters.
Toastmasters really helped me improve my listening skills.
sales skills,
opportunities to go to different groups and widen my whole horizon.
Toastmasters has given me a more focused me, and I'm a much better listener. Toastmasters is fulfilling.
It's a great place to fail your way to success.
Wonderful way to meet people.
Networking.
Strength. It's addictive.
It's a club of self-improvement.
It's an experience, it's a ride that you won't forget, and you'll enjoy it every step of the way.
Toastmasters helped me land a kick-butt job. I sang at one of my table topic speeches, and people liked it and applauded.
My business is doing great, and I'm very, very grateful to Toastmasters.
It's been a great experience for me.
Thank you, Toastmasters.
Thank you, Toastmasters.
Thank you, Toastmasters, for giving me so much confidence.
Thank you, Toastmasters, for everything.
Welcome back to The Right Stuff. I'm Ken Coomes, the host, associated with TV Toastmasters and Daylighters. And in this episode, we're talking to Kathryn Schleich, an amazing author and woman who has written a number of short pieces and a couple of books. One that started out as a screenplay. We've been talking about that, Salvation Station. So Kathryn, again, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure, Ken. Thank you for having me.
And you made an interesting observation that I've talked to many new and aspiring writers, the same thing. You used to write. It took a number of years before you got back into writing. When you were writing your thesis, you remembered that you liked to write and got into it a little bit more. So many authors and would-be authors let life get in the way. So
That is very true. That is very true.
And if we don't make a true concerted effort to write it, it's easy for life to get in the way because there are many, many distractors, perhaps fewer for most people now with the pandemic, where they're sheltering in place still in many places. But still, it requires a devoted effort to be a writer. And obviously, it was a devoted effort on your part to spend 10 years to bring Salvation Station to fruition.
It was, but I feel like it took too long, and I really want to pick up my output because I did write a book prior to Salvation Station that I self-published that my publicist and I are going to re-release in spring of 2021, and that is called Shades of Darkness, Shades of Grace. And it is based on true events that happened to my family. And that brings up the question authors talk about, you know, what's it like to write about family? What do they think? And it's a tightrope. You have to be very, very careful because a lot of times your family is not going to be happy that you're writing about them.
And you made a comment about letting life get in the way of your writing. And I've talked to a lot of authors and would-be authors that experience that same thing. So how did you get to the point where it's not getting in the way as much now?
Partly because you get older, as you get older, and you think, okay, I only have a finite amount of time, and I really enjoy doing this, and I want to have a greater output. And the second thing is that it's just me. Unfortunately, my husband and I ended up divorcing, and so, and I have more time. And with the pandemic, as we talked about, you are having a lot more time to write, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, I have all of this time. I have no meetings. I'm not going anywhere. I definitely need to be writing.
Good point. And you mentioned you have a finite amount of time. But I want to encourage our younger viewers to recognize none of us knows how long that is. It might be a short time, even if you're in your 20s or 30s. So don't allow yourself to get older before you decide to put writing in the way of life, if you want to write.
I think that's so true, because I think what came to me was I don't want to be at the end of my life and regret, oh, I should have written more, or I should have written this book. And honestly, Ken, a lot of authors say, I have a book in me, but I'll get to it later. And just as you said, we have no idea how long it's going to last in this lifetime. And I encourage young people as well, if you think you have a story to tell, tell it.
And I would add to that, we all have a story to tell, at least one, and most of us a lot more than one.
That's very true.
And sometimes those stories that come from our life, we have to be careful with. You were talking about a book that's coming out, The 50 Shades of Darkness and
Shades of Darkness,
Okay.
Shades of Grace. And it's easy to get that mixed up with, I would like that to be as successful as 50 Shades of Grey, but Shades of Darkness, Shades of Grace is, I self-published in 2007, and I also used a pen name because my family didn't want to have this event, these series of events that happened over about 5 years, made public. And enough time has gone by that I mean, people who have read the version that I self-published can't put it down, and it's a good story. I mean, it's more of a religious story even than Salvation Station, but it's about how even the best of people, whether it's the minister's wife or the minister or the deacon or whatever, can be pushed by a force of evil within their life.
Well, I think it was St. Paul who wrote, I do what I do not wish to do, and I do not do what I want to do. Our willpower sometimes isn't strong enough as our won't power.
And I also think that a lot of people, and this is true in Salvation Station as well as Shades of Darkness, Shades of Grace, that people think that evil happens in movies and books. No pun intended there, because I obviously am writing books with an element of evil. But when it happens to you in your life and you come face to face with it, that changes your perspective.
It does. Some have expressed that we are in an internal state of war, good versus evil, even if it's not visible. So some people are aware of that, and some people haven't yet experienced it. I wish they do not, but they probably will. So talking about authors and would-be authors and advice for them, is there one or two key pieces of advice you would give to authors or people that want to be writers?
There's actually three, and the first would be write and write often, because writing like a muscle, if you don't do it, it can atrophy. The second thing I would say is submit once to contest. Don't be afraid. I mean, if you are afraid to submit your piece, then you'll never get published. And the third thing is, and memoirs are so big right now, don't be afraid, and this is true in Shades of Darkness, Shades of Grey, don't be afraid to share personal things that may not be happy. They may be difficult to talk about, because that's what makes people or readers relate to you.
Great advice. Write and write often was number one. I would even say write daily, and I've been working on that for a while based on Stephen King's book on writing.
An amazing book.
It is. Submit. It's it's true in a lot of life, like in putting. Authors like to say, a shortcut never goes in. Well, if you don't submit, you have no chance of winning.
Or even being recognized, yeah.
Yeah. So good advice for writers. I really appreciate that. Flip side, following the model of the shades of darkness, shades of grace. Those might be considered shades of grace, if I may paraphrase. So in the shades of darkness, are there any points you want to point out, pitfalls that writers should avoid through them not submitting?
Yeah. The first point would be, writing is not a get-rich scheme. Do not expect that you're going to become a millionaire. I mean, yes, it does happen, but that is not typical.
Points. So
yes.
Do submit rather than don't submit. Don't be afraid of what you're writing. Don't be afraid to submit it. So good advice all around. Are you available if any of the author or wannabe authors want to reach out to you? How would they contact you best?
They would contact me via my website, which is just katherineschleich.com, and there is a contact form. I'm also doing some online book events.
Okay.
And so we will be doing that. And then we'll be promoting the book, obviously quite heavily.
All right. Across the bottom of your screen, viewers, you'll see Katherine's website. And it is not just content information. It's loaded with great advice as well as information about Katherine's writing. But there's a lot of advice for writers there. Great reading, great blog. So thank you, Kathryn, for that. I think we've covered your Salvation Station. We've talked about the shades of darkness, shades of gray, leaving out the number 50. And we've talked about the shades of grace, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
We talked about women in Hollywood and Catholic women. We talked about your award. So it's been a very pleasant interview. In closing, forget writing for a moment. People in general, do you have any words of wisdom to say, look, I have been through some things. I want to share with you this nugget so that you don't have to suffer as I did or whatever.
I guess because in the times that we currently live in, I would say be kind to one another. Let's get along. I mean, we really need to do that. There's just so much animosity. And I just feel that we really need to look for the similarities that we all share rather than our differences.
Excellent, excellent advice. Thank you for that. Yes. So I'm going to close the segment now. Remind you and share her point of view about the looking for the similarities instead of the differences. We are each of us a unique individual with a high 90s probably % of commonality with other people in the world. So we're brothers and sisters and children in the same vein. It's not like we write so we're better than others, or we write so that we're worse than others. It's not that we do this or do that or look this way or look that way. We are all people. So please respect other people and learn from them, because there's so many lessons to learn from people who are not you. It's been a pleasure talking to you again on The Right Stuff. Kathryn, you've been a great guest. Kathryn Schleich. Again, she can be contacted through our website. It's laid across the bottom.
It's been a pleasure, Ken. Thank you so much.
It has been my pleasure indeed, and after our technical difficulties. So thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing your books and perhaps talking to you again another time. Ken Coomes signing off for The Right Stuff. Thank you for watching.